The events surrounding Lot's wife take place during the destruction of the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah, infamous for their wickedness and sin. Lot, the nephew of Abraham, lived in Sodom with his wife and at least 2 daughters. The Bible indicates that Lot and his family were not entirely immune to the influence of the sinful cities, which would later become evident in the actions of his wife. The story of Lot's wife begins with the arrival of 2 angels in Sodom, who appeared in human form as foreign travelers. Lot, seated at the city gate, was likely a respected member of the community, as in ancient times, elders would gather at the entrance of the city to decide legal matters. At first, the angels stated they would spend the night in the street, but Lot insisted and invited them to his home for shelter. It is uncertain whether Lot initially recognized the visitors as divine messengers, but he welcomed them into his home, where they were fed. Before the angels could retire for the night, the men of Sodom surrounded Lot's house, demanding access to the angelic visitors. Lot tried to negotiate with the men, even risking the well-being of his daughters in an attempt to contain them and protect his guests, adhering to the ancient Near East's code of conduct regarding hospitality. However, the men of Sodom grew more violent, ignored Lot's pleas, threatened him, and tried to break down his door. At that moment, the angels pulled Lot back inside the house and struck the men of Sodom with blindness, from the youngest to the oldest, demonstrating the pervasive wickedness of the city. Blinded by the angels of the Lord, the men of Sodom were no longer able to find the door to Lot's house. The angels then urged Lot to take his wife, daughters, and sons-in-law and flee the city as quickly as possible at the break of dawn. They warned that the sin of Sodom had reached its limit in God's eyes and divine judgment was imminent. Lot's family demonstrated some hesitation, foreshadowing the actions of Lot's wife later in the narrative. His sons-in-law, who were to marry Lot's daughters, did not believe in Lot's warning and disregarded God's impending judgment. As a result, only Lot, his wife, and their 2 daughters left Sodom. In an act of God's mercy, the angels eventually led them out of the city by the hand, ensuring their escape from the impending destruction. Upon leaving the city, the angels instructed Lot and his family to flee to the mountains without looking back or stopping along the way, lest they perish in the destruction. Lot negotiated with the angels to allow his family to take refuge in the small town of Zoar, which was ultimately spared from destruction. As the sun rose, Lot and his family arrived in Zoar, and the Lord rained sulfur and fire on Sodom, Gomorrah, and the surrounding plain, destroying everything and everyone in the vicinity. It was at this point that Lot's wife disobeyed the Lord's command through the angels and looked back, resulting in her transformation into a pillar of salt. Some scholars propose that the transformation of Lot's wife into a pillar of salt may be a metaphor for her sudden death and burial by the materials that rained down during God's judgment. The region where this event took place, including the Dead Sea, is rich in salt and sulfur, and pillar-like salt formations are commonly used as tourist mementos of Lot's wife's story. However, there are also other scholars who believe that Lot's wife was literally transformed into a pillar of salt by the supernatural power of God's judgment, emphasizing the gravity of her disobedience and the severity of the consequences. The story of Lot's wife serves as a potent reminder of the consequences of hesitation and disobedience when faced with divine instructions. In the New Testament, Jesus references Lot's wife as a warning to his followers about the importance of remaining faithful and obedient to God's call, urging them never to disregard the announcement of divine judgment. Moreover, the story of Lot's wife highlights the significance of faith and trust in God during times of uncertainty and danger. Her decision to look back can be seen as a lack of faith in God's promises and guidance. To avoid making the same mistake, we must cultivate our faith and trust in God, seeking divine guidance and wisdom in our daily lives. Furthermore, the narrative of Lot's wife teaches us about the grace and mercy of God. The destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah was an act of divine justice in response to the city's sin and wickedness, but it also provided an opportunity for Lot's family to experience God's love and protection. Even when we face negative consequences for our actions, God continues to offer us chances for redemption and spiritual growth. Additionally, the story of Lot's wife serves as a cautionary account against becoming too attached to the material world or the sinful ways of society. Although she physically left Sodom, her heart remained attached to the city, leading to her ultimate demise. This lesson reminds us to keep our focus on God and the eternal, rather than the temporary and fleeting pleasures of the world. In conclusion, the story of Lot's wife is a significant account emphasizing the importance of obedience, faith, and commitment to God. By examining the historical context, biblical narrative, and interpretations of her story, we can gain valuable understanding into the dangers of hesitation, disobedience, and misplaced priorities. By applying these lessons to our own lives, we can steer clear of the pitfalls that led to Lot's wife's tragic end and draw closer to God and His plan for us. As we navigate the complexities of our walk with God, let us always remember the story of Lot's wife and the importance of unwavering faith, obedience, and dedication to God's will.